Welcome, everybody. I love the vigorous conversation in the audience. Hopefully, we can continue that with lots of really positive public comments this evening. It is our September 24th meeting, and we will have a roll call, please, Sarah.
Thank you. Councilmember Henderson?
Here.
Vice Mayor Zabriskie?
Here.
Mayor Pallavi?
Here.
Councilmember Klostad?
Here.
And Councilmember Romack?
Here.
Thank you.
And if everybody could rise, and we'll have Mr. Paco Lindsay lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, volunteer extraordinaire out there. Thank you for that. We're going to move right into public comment. Public comment is an opportunity to talk about anything not on the agenda. You have 3 minutes. Please state your name, and please make sure the microphone light is turned green. Thanks, Steve.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good evening, Mayor and council members and staff and ladies and gentlemen. For the record, my name is Steve Teixeira, and I'm here on behalf of Truckee Citizens for Essential Services. Just to remind everybody that you can check out information about the benefits of the measure by going to our website at yesone4truckee.org. Thank you very much. Have a good meeting.
Thank you, Steve. Any other public comment this evening on anything not on our agenda? Okay, seeing none. Closing public comment. Thank you very much. We're going to move into our presentations, and I have the first presentation is going to be another one of our small business Big Applause Awards, and I'm going to ask Bill and Sheila Greeno to meet me over at the podium over there for the award. Nice to see you again. Oh, wherever you want. That's great. Oh, you guys are just so great. Local businesses are special. They are owned by people who live in our community, work in our community. They donate to local charities. They volunteer. They provide services and character that make our community unique and special. These small business, oh, you guys are just on it with the photos. Here, hold this. Okay. Here you go, since they're all taking so many photos. We've been doing these awards throughout the year to recognize some of our local businesses and some of the contributions that they make to our community. As a local business owner myself, I want to recognize and celebrate all of these businesses because it's important. And on behalf of all of us, Truckee Town Council and staff, I would like to recognize Quality Automotive Servicing. Thank you. Still have the jingle in my head from years past, so I have to double take. Quality Automotive Servicing, owned by Sheila and Bill Greeno. With a Small Business Big Applause Award, and there it is. So in support of Town Council's goal to actively support development of workforce housing, the Greenos were the first business to participate in the Truckee Home Access Program, otherwise known as THAP for those on the inside. THAP pays buyers, sellers, and local businesses to reserve homes for income-qualified local workers using a 55-year deed restriction. Bill and Sheila graciously walked through the THAP program for business process with town staff, allowing for flexibility and needed program clarifications and modifications as they arose. The THAP for Business program is better today, thanks to the efforts of you guys, and another home in our community is now preserved for the local workforce. I think the flexibility is really important to add. I'm going to veer from my script a little bit because I think, Bill, you and I had a few conversations during that process, and sometimes they were frustrating and sometimes they were successful. And I think for anybody going through any of these town programs for the first time, we want to thank you. Whether you're a business, a buyer, a seller, doesn't really matter. What we're trying to do is unique and innovative and isn't always well crafted sometimes up here on the dais or in our offices. And as I always like to say, it's so important to get out and actually put the stuff into action to see what those hiccups might be, what some of the roadblocks might be, and what some of the successes can be as we move towards implementation on a much wider scale. So, I want to say thank you to Quality Automotive Servicing for being such wonderful partners with the town, contributing to the advancement of workforce housing for our community. And also, I will add one more few words, but as local businesses, it's really also quite difficult to run for office. And so, speaking from one elected official to somebody who's on the ballot, just want you all to know, Mr. Greeno is running for the Tahoe Truckee Airport District Board, and yet another opportunity to support local businesses in our community and those local business owners. With that, congratulations. Thank you. Please say a few words, and then we will have an official picture with all of council in front of the dais, because those weren't enough.
Fantastic. We need the official ones. Thanks, Dave. Thanks, council members and staff. It's a huge honor. We really appreciate your efforts here. And I think the frustrated conversations were with somebody else that week, because honestly, staff was great with this whole process and really flexible and changed the program as we suggested in a number of ways. So it was actually a great process. And the one thing I would say moving forward that we're seeing now is the folks that would be THAP candidates really need the down payment assistance. And so if we can encourage the other folks in town, the other larger organizations, districts, to assist their staffs with down payment assistance. I think the inventory of deed restricted houses will be more available. It looks like right now we're trying to 1031 that house now into a commercial building here in town, and to sustain a business here in town. And it looks like the hospital assistance program might help this person through. So, thanks.
Thank you.
Quick picture.
Jen, go ahead with the town manager report.
Great, thank you. Just 2 items. The town work on West River Street in terms of traffic delays and one-way traffic should be done. So our portion of the work should be done with regards to having impacts on the flow of traffic. The utility districts will still be in there doing some of their undergrounding, and so they may have periodic traffic changes on West River, but it is back to 2-way as of tonight and should stay that way mostly, unless there's some utility work going on. So no, thanks to everybody for their patience on that project, but it's exciting how it's coming together. Another thank you for your patience with the Legacy Trail work that we've been doing. We have the last closure on the Legacy Trail starting tomorrow through the 27th, and that's to do some final work from the previous construction that was done, or the repaving that was done there. There's also a little segment here, Ranch Way Spur Trail, that was closed this afternoon, but should be open again tomorrow. So if you're commuting on the Legacy Trail, you won't be able to do that from Glenshire for the next couple of days, but then it will be open and beautiful and a smooth smooth ride into town. So thanks for your patience. And that's all I have.
That's it. Thank you. Great. Any questions or comments on presentations from council? No? Staff? Good. Public? Any comments or questions on any of the presentations? Great. Seeing none. Moving on. Consent. We have 6.1, minutes of September 10th. 6.2, adopting the amended Town of Truckee wage matrix. 6.3, the reimbursement agreement with the Truckee Donner Land Trust. 6.4, request to co-sponsor climate speaker event with Citizens Climate Lobby. Any member of council want to pull anything from consent? Any member of staff want to pull anything from consent? And
No, Mayor.
any member of the public looking to pull anything from consent? Great. Seeing none. Vice Mayor Zabriskie, can we have a motion to pass our consent calendar?
I move that we approve the consent items.
I'll second.
Thank you, Councilmember Romack, and all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Seeing none, consent carries. Thank you very much. And we will move right into item 7.1. Chief Renfro with the Registered Veterinary Technician position and partnership with the Humane Society of Truckee, Tahoe.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, Council. Tonight we're going to talk about the Registered Vet Tech position in partnership with the Humane Society of Truckee, Tahoe. We do have Stephanie Nitzler here as well as CEO of the HSTT, and I believe some staff as well. So I believe she has some things to say after I conclude here. So the background, last time we were here, we talked about the long-term partnership that we've had at the Humane Society in animal sheltering. So that's been really over the last 20 years. And then in 2014, we created a formal operating agreement that was established to outline each entity's responsibility and financial contributions. So under this agreement, the town's obligation would be to provide a vet tech to support the community spay and neuter program. So our current situation and the evolution of this position has expanded to include broader responsibilities in the overall operation of the animal shelter and the Humane Society. So this position really plays a key role. And currently, that person that's filling that role is retiring November 1st. So there's really a time crunch on this. And that person there, a dedicated town employee for over the last 10 years, has wore many hats over there. And it's going to be a huge gap to fill. Not only was she the vet tech for the entire building, but she's also the shelter manager. So that's something that we're going to have to fill in the near future. As mentioned, this position has historically been a town employee for the last 10 years. So the new hiring and the proposed transition, moving forward, the town and HSTT have agreed that HSTT will take on the hiring and management of the veterinary technician, while the town will continue to fund that position. This shift aligns with our current agreement and also the collective mission and in operational continuity. The compensation package for this position, HSTT has outlined a salary range of $85,000 per year, with a total fully weighted cost not to exceed $100,000. Bless you. So it's essential that HSTT begins recruitment and has the ability to fill this position before the November 1st, 2024 deadline to ensure that there's no shelter disruption in operation and or community services. So we are continuing to have ongoing discussions. I know last time when we were here, you directed us to continue the conversations with HSTT to see about future management of the sheltering services in that building, and we'll continue working toward that goal. The fiscal impact, the exact fiscal impact remains to be determined. However, cost savings from the vacancy starting November 1st will offset a portion of this expense. The long-term staffing structure at the animal shelter is under review with further discussions planned for a future council meeting. So with that, the recommended action is to authorize the town manager to execute an agreement and allocate funding for a registered veterinary technician position in partnership with the Humane Society of Truckee, Tahoe, not to exceed $100,000. And I believe Steph has some additions to this.
Well, Steph is headed up to the microphone. Just kudos to Thrifty Trails. They won the New Business of the Year award at the Chamber event on Friday, a few days ago. So congratulations, Steph.
I don't know.
Thank you. That was very exciting. Mayor, council members, staff, thank you for having me. I just have something that I want to read. So this is the next step in the evolution of a long-standing partnership between HSTT and the town of Truckee to provide medical care and spay-neuter services to shelter and community pets. Even before I started working for HSTT over 20 years ago, the town was already providing funding for our community spay-neuter program, which continued and grew until we opened the Truckee Animal Shelter in 2013. From that point forward, the town provided the registered veterinary technician for the clinic, and the Humane Society provided the veterinarians and the veterinary assistants. I am very proud to say that together we have altered over 4,000 shelter pets and provided low-cost or free spay-neuter surgeries to over 4,000 community pets from income-qualifying households. Considering that approximately 51% of our community spay-neuter pets are females and the average litter size is 6, we can assume that we have prevented the birth of over 12,000 unwanted puppies and kittens in our community. And in turn, we have saved as many existing pets already in the sheltering system by freeing up shelter space for people to adopt. That has been done by all of us together, and we are so thankful for that. In addition to managing clinic operations, the RVT position has developed into the very important role of overseeing the well-being of our entire shelter population under the supervision and guidance of our veterinarians. Under this model, using best practices, we have excelled at disease prevention and providing our shelter pets with the exceptional care that they deserve. We are so thankful, all of us at the Humane Society, we're so thankful for our long and progressive and community-minded partnership with the town. And we look forward to providing even more vital services to meet the growing needs of our community as we move into the future. And that's all.
Thank you, Stephanie.
You're welcome.
Appreciate those comments. Great. Steph, we're good? You guys are good? Okay. We'll bring it up to council for any questions. Councilmember Henderson, any questions?
No questions, thank you.
Vice Mayor Zabriskie.
I just have a couple questions. I wanted to get a little context here. I understand state law and then our own ordinances make the town responsible for animal control, which would include rabies and dangerous dogs, and that leads right into having a place to place the animals. If animal control's picking them up, do those animals go to the shelter at the Humane Society, or does the town have a separate facility? Or
No, it's a joint facility over there in Stevens Lane. Half of it or a quarter of it is the animal shelter run by town staff, and the other 3/4 is HSTT operations.
okay, would there still be town staff involved in any of that activity, or would that be taken over by Humane Society?
Well, that's still yet to be determined. We're still having those discussions, but currently, right now, the gap is this registered vet tech in order to fill that void, because that's the necessity right now, amongst others, as we continue these conversations.
So right now, we don't know who would be responsible for taking in the animals at the shelter, as between a town employee and the Humane Society?
Currently, it's going to be town employees right now. So we are currently staffing the animal shelter side of the house up until and if and when we come to an agreement.
Okay, thank you.
Good. Yeah. Councilmember Klostad? No? And Romack? No questions? No questions from me. We'll open this item up for public comment. Any public comment on this item? Come on up. No? Nothing? Okay. Thank you all for being here. We'll close public comment. We'll bring it back for any deliberation. Councilmember Henderson, I'll start on this side.
I just want to say that I'm so grateful for everything that you do. I adopted my dog Buck from the Humane Society about 9 or 10 years ago. He's still kicking strong, even though he's getting kind of old. But I just think the services that you offer and the community benefit that you offer to Truckee and the broader region is really incredible. this is a critical role. So I'm ready to move that we adopt the recommended action.
Yeah, agreed. Vice Mayor Zabriskie, anything to add?
I agree with Councilmember Henderson, except my dog's name is Teddy.
I think we did this last time, and mine's Gracie, also adopted from the Humane Society. Councilmember Klostad.
I concur, and I will second.
Did we have a motion? Did you make a motion? I did. Oh, you made a motion. I'm sorry. Councilmember Henderson made a motion. Councilmember Klostad seconded. Councilmember Romack, anything to add?
Support all of that. I've yet to adopt a dog, but maybe in the future.
There you go. Great. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? No. Great. Thank you. Thanks for continuing your services and everything that you guys do for the community. We appreciate you. Thank you. All right, item 7.2, the West River Street Park. Mr. Wilkins. It's been a while since you gave a presentation, huh, Dan?
I distracted him by asking if he wanted to play his video starring Vice Mayor and Councilmember Romack.
Thanks. So I've had the opportunity to do a site visit with Councilmember Yan and Councilmember Lindsay last week. Thanks for making the time to come out. The question so you're all familiar with the West River Street Park site that's now called, Andy, take it away.
Delbe Umwe.
Thank you. I always mispronounce it, and I always get corrected by one of these two. So the park's well underway. The question we wanted to put in front of you is whether or not you want us to do a little more work on the riverbank than we were previously planning on doing. So this is what the park looked like late last week in terms of the rough grading that was done. The slope that's below the park elevation. So the first thing I want to say is what the park project has done to date is get rid of probably 75 to 80% of the erosive slopes that were kind of directly up above the river. But the scope of the park project by design was to stay above the floodplain elevation. So as a result, we've got this 10 to 12 feet of hillside, former fill, of historic fill, that's below the park elevation, that is still kind of not great soil to be on the riverbank. So the question in front of you is whether or not you want us to try to do some work over the winter to get to improve that slope and kind of get rid of all the erosion that's going on, and then do some beneficial things from a river standpoint. So that's the basic question. Let me back up just a bit. This is an example. You can't see it really well in this pocket, but here you've got some decent vegetation in some areas, but you got other areas where you kind of got this eroding slope. We met out there with David Shaw from Balance Hydrologics a couple days ago, and I talked to him about what we might be able to do to improve the situation. He was suggesting, we're like, should we be trying to do more vegetation in the slope? Should we be doing like a rock wall and trying to create more lower elevation stuff? His first inclination was to try to take a lot of this eroding slope material out, replace it with like large boulders, but kind of back closer to the toe of the slope, and then create where this lower toe is, kind of turn that into more of a flat area next to the river where willows, grasses, those kinds of things could grow because they're down close enough to the river to get the water that they need. So we're not exactly sure what the right treatment is. That's one potential treatment. Another one could be just trying to get vegetation to grow here. I think what we've got general consensus on is that there's room for improvement on this portion of the slope that sits down below the current limits of the park. And I think our suggestion as staff is that you give us direction to see what we can do with that, with the goal of implementing it next spring. Anything we do that's in the floodplain is going to have to go through permitting by the Army Corps of Engineers, Lahontan Regional Quality Control Board, California Department of Fish and Wildlife. That's going to take time. There's no way that is going to happen in this construction season. We're optimistic that we could put a design together that could be reviewed and approved by them over the winter, and then work with our contractor to do the implementation next spring. So we've spoken with the Watershed Council about this. They agree that that slope could use some work, and they were not clear as to what the best approach was. I think their suggestion was hire a good consultant to help figure out what the best approach is and pursue it if we're willing to put the time and money into it. So we would most likely need to delay the park opening till 2025. That has to do with getting construction access down to that lower area and leaving construction staging area for the contractor. We're still looking at it with them to see if there's an option where we could potentially get the park open prior to next spring and then maybe build this while the park is actually open, but it'd be a little dicey. And I think the expectation that should be established is if we do this work, we would not open the park until the work's completed. There could be a Goldilocks scenario where we might be able to get the park open and do this additional work as well, but don't count on that in making your decision. I'll put it that way. We think this could be up to about $500,000, which is about the amount that exists in the budget that we're not currently we're expecting would be spent on the park project itself. So if you gave us direction to work on this, we would be working on it within the existing park budget, and then we would, for implementation, in all likelihood, definitely we'd just be working with the same contractor through a change order to implement this additional work. So our recommendation is that you direct us to pursue additional slope stabilization between the West River Street Park, missed it, and the Truckee River. I was looking for someone to pronounce it for me again, but, yeah, right. And the Truckee River. So with that, I'll stop.
Thanks, Dan. I think we'll all need a recording of that so we can make sure to rehearse that saying, because I know I definitely need some practice saying that as well. So we'll pass that on. Okay, any questions? I'll start at this.
Well, as Dan mentioned, I participated in the tour, so I asked a lot of questions there. And I think you said on that tour, and maybe in the staff report, estimates, maybe if we do this work, the park would open July-ish of next year, potentially?
Yeah, I think if that would be a reasonable goal. If the park needs to stay closed until we can get this work done, that would give us May and June of next year. And river levels need to be, we need to make sure river levels aren't too high. So some of it's going to depend on what happens this winter and how much water they have to release from Tahoe next spring.
Thank you. That's it. Thank you.
Councilmember Klostad.
It was the same line of thinking of just we're going to do this work in the spring, chances are river levels will be up. You're not considering dewatering or anything in order to access that. You're just going to wait for river levels to come down.
Yeah, we would. That would be definitely the way to do it.
Yeah, which will ultimately impact the ability to open.
Yeah, and you just never know, because some years, like this year, they were holding water in Tahoe up until July, and then they increased the release rate. And on a year if next year's river flows are the same as this year, we'll be fine to start in May. If for some reason if we get a big winter and the lake fills up and they have to start doing early releases, like in March and April, to make sure that the dam doesn't get overtopped in Tahoe City, then that could set us back from a timing standpoint.
Thank you.
Councilmember Henderson?
Are there any risks to it not falling within the existing park budget that you can think of? Or that you've been concerned about?
There's always risk of that. You know, we've done some preliminary communication with the contractor about what we think would be the more expensive end of the spectrum on what the project would be, and we believe that would fit within the $500,000 estimate.
And then I know you said that we're not sure on what the treatment will look like. So is that just something that'll be sort of figured out as you have some of these conversations, or sort of what's the process to figure out that treatment?
Yeah, so what we would recommend is that, so we have the design team for the park. What we would recommend is that we bring in a sub-consultant with experience in river restoration and river flow modeling to that team to develop recommendations. And then we would probably use the existing civil engineer that did the civil engineering on the park design to develop additional plan sheets for this bank restoration with the input of the river restoration specialist. And then get that developed. We would involve the Truckee River Watershed Council in that to gain their expertise in the and opinions in the process, and then ultimately we'd have to go through the regulatory agencies and make sure they agree that what we're doing is appropriate, for the river and the floodplain.
Okay, thank you so much. That's it for me.
Can you go back to one of the slides that just shows the bank? Okay.
That's the one with the car.
Yeah.
Let me go back one more.
Yeah. Have you gotten the date on the car yet?
Don't know what age the car is. It looks like a Model T, though.
Okay. Now, on the, where will the surface runoff go? Is it going into drains, or is it going to?
From the park?
Yes, from the park.
Yeah, so the drainage from the park is designed to be collected in the park, and then it goes into what's effectively almost like a leach field under one of the lower plazas. So what we did is we put in large chambers that can store water, surrounded them by drain rock. So all the drainage will go in there, and then it's intended to infiltrate into the soil below the park.
Okay. And so I understand the bank stabilization is directed at addressing erosion in normal years, and then in the case of catastrophic flooding, erosion from that heightened impact. I'm thinking in terms of the visual impact and the reflection on the town for people who visit the park or the other side of the river and see that park as emblematic of how much the town cares about the river, regardless of the slope. Along those lines, will any of this analysis about what to do include aesthetic considerations?
Yeah, to the extent that we would want, if we're going to do the bank stabilization, I would see a vegetation component coming along with that that's intended to encourage growth of appropriate species. And I know some of the biological work that's been done in this corridor has suggested that more cottonwood would be a good thing. So I think it could create an opportunity to try to establish more cottonwood growth in this area than what might naturally occur. So to the extent that getting river vegetation established more substantially in the river corridor provides a kind of better visual of the river than the existing eroding slopes, I think there'd be some visual benefit there. It's not necessarily like from a CEQA standpoint where we're going to go through a visual impact analysis or that type of thing.
Yep.
Yeah, so.
Okay, thank you very much.
I have a couple quick questions. Where are the savings coming from the budget to actual that we're expecting?
I'm not quite sure. I think it was, so as we're preparing our budget, we were bidding the park project on a similar timeline. I think our budget was prepared based on estimates of the total park project cost prior to getting construction bids. And then after we got the construction bids, we didn't, at the same time, reduce the park budget. We just left it alone. And so it wasn't like there was a major $500,000 cost reduction from our bid. It was that our bid came in under what we had budgeted.
You also seem to be inferring sort of an easy and smooth processing timeline and application, and you're kind of glossing over like 5 agencies that you mentioned there that, at least in my recollection and experience, don't have a really smooth and easy processing opportunity. So can you maybe just speak to that a little bit more? And like, are we going for actual permits, or are we just going for like a little checkbox?
No, we would need to get permits for this because this is doing grading work on the riverbank below the floodplain. And our, I guess, hope is that because we're doing this in the interest of riverbank restoration and kind of improved characteristics of the river, that would be a smoother permitting run than if we were doing this for other reasons. So with that, it's always a bit of an unknown getting through those permitting entities, both from a standpoint of do they see the work we're trying to do as being beneficial, or do they see it as something other than that? And then also just their internal staffing and
did this project
capacity.
have to get the same permits? So like they're not even aware we're even doing this project, correct?
They're aware because, so Lahontan, we had to get a construction general permit, but we didn't have to get permits related to the floodplain.
Right.
Department of Fish and Wildlife, we had to get a permit because we were on the bank of the river where we were removing the existing overburden. So they're aware we've got something going on out here. Army Corps has had no involvement with it. So it would be different types of permits with all 3 of those entities going forward, and there is risk that that could add more time than we're hoping over the winter to get those finalized.
Which sets me up for the last question, which is your staff resources. Clearly, this is going to take staff resources.
Yep.
It's not a work plan, but it's not a work plan project. It's not this is basically going to be a new addition as we head into the next item on our agenda.
Yep.
Is NOLA going to continue on this project, or is this going to be somebody else?
This would be NOLA taking the lead on this.
And she's going to manage this through the permitting, and the consultants are going to get the permits, or we are internally, or we just don't know yet.
We would have the consultants do as much of the permitting work as possible to try to minimize that impact on our resources.
Okay.
But it's like a third to a half of a project. The fact that the contractor bid process.
Yeah, we don't have to bid it again.
Yeah,
I get that.
There's some efficiency, but yeah, it's another body of work. It's not insignificant.
Yeah, that's, I think, what I was getting at, and maybe just my last question, and as it ties into this, but it's definitely a question for Jen, probably. When do we're going to head into our work plan. We've been talking about public works backlogs with CIP projects. It's been a constant source of conversation up here. So, where are we with the Baker-Tilly assessment and undoing the hiring freeze that we sort of put in order to free up more resources to work on so many of the things that we're seeing delayed?
I don't have an exact date for receiving the first kind of preliminary report, which I believe is going to focus on staffing needs. It is supposed to be coming any time now. They're in the review stage of that. We'll take that, we'll have some update to council, but then we'll have to go through prioritization and figure out where we're going to first hire and what areas, if that's what the recommendations are. So that may or may not align with an early retreat day, if you will. That can happen anytime now, given that we know who the council is going to be consisting of for the next 2 years. So I don't have a great answer, but
Yeah. I think the theme has been clear, and we can talk about it a little bit more in deliberation, though. Great. With no further questions from at least myself and others, we'll open it up for public comments. Any public comment on this item? No? Okay. Closing public comment. We will bring it back for deliberation. I think I started with you, Councilmember Romack.
Yeah, I'm happy to jump in. Really appreciate, again, staff bringing Vice Mayor and I out there, whatever we're calling each other today. And also appreciate the video that Court Levy put together. It's funny, I've gotten more questions on this video and social media posts than a lot of others. Just a lot of people talking, they're like, oh, what's happening with the park? What is being looked at? So I think that's a positive testament to the outreach that we're doing, that we're putting stuff out there that people are paying attention to. I think in those conversations, similar, Mayor, to what you just brought up, is everybody's really excited for the park and what does this mean for the opening of the park. However, I think in talking through the tour, talking with folks, the understanding of we should make sure we're doing this project fully and not be putting in a park in and then leaving a big area that's going to cause erosion, which could maybe in a years cause destabilization of the park or, cause more adverse impacts on the Truckee River. So it does seem like we should take the time to do it right now. I think, again, to your questioning, Mayor, I would encourage staff, whatever we can do to ensure we're staying on the permitting agencies, to be moving this as quickly as possible so we're prepared as soon as we can start is really important. I think I had asked a question in our council deliberation on our next item related to the active or transportation plan, and there was mention of staff who would be working on this is the ones that would work on that, and that's why there's a delay in that. So we need to think about that, but I think to me, it makes sense at this time to move forward with this project, understanding the park will probably be delayed. It may hold up some of our other projects, but I support doing this all now while we're out there and doing the work. Thanks.
Thank you. Councilmember Klofstad.
Yeah, I'm in support of this. It's the right thing to do for the river, and after decades of not treating the river very well, I think this is something that's really appropriate in order to protect it, to protect the park. I agree we have some conversations to have about priorities and staffing, but that's for the next item. This is really important to do at this time while we have access, though.
Great. Anything from this
Yeah,
side?
I'm in agreement. I think the one thing that we didn't talk about as much is just also the efficiency of doing it now, right? Like if we do it in the future, it might end up costing more, I think was in the staff report. So I think it is the right timing. Love that we're doing it within the existing budget. That's fabulous. And it's important for river health. We've really prioritized just river access and river opportunities. So thank you for identifying it and bringing it forward, and I support it.
Yeah, the mayor raised good questions on the external permitting process with both the federal government and state government. We don't know if Fish and Wildlife has a backlog in the stream bed alteration permitting processes, and we don't know the same about with the federal government. But on the merits, this should be a very attractive project. The picture you had up there, worth 1,000 words, and anyone down in Sacramento looking at it, I think, would be wanting to approve it once they got down to it in their stack of other projects. If we got to that point where there wasn't activity, That's one of the reasons we have elected officials in the legislature, and we could be asking them for help. And the same would be true at the federal level. So I'm willing to take that risk that it delays the park opening beyond what we're talking about, because I feel this is really important. And similarly, for our own staff, if it turns out there's a higher priority and we have to pull staff to do something else, I'm willing to live with that as long as we have this on track to be done before we do further work on the park. So I agree with the other council members.
About a motion.
I move that
we're not
we direct staff to pursue additional slope stabilization work between the West River,
don't think we
Delbayuma
move.
Way. Between the Delbayuma Way Park and the Truckee River.
And I don't actually think we need a motion, do we? You were just looking for direction. I apologize.
You have a motion on the floor, so you might as well.
Might as well take it. Okay. How about a second? Yeah.
I'll second.
All right. Everybody in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? No. Great. Motion passes. Thank you. And with that, we will move into 7.3, work plan update.
Well, I am pulling this up. It might be a record that we are on the last item before 6 o'clock.
She always does that.
It was notable. Yeah. Okay, this is your quarterly strategic focus area work plan update, and this is for the period ending June 30th, 2024. There's several items that you probably noticed in the work plan that you've heard recently that if we were doing an update as of September 30th, would be noted as complete. So we probably have a little bit of crossover between things that maybe finished up in July timeframe, but we try to keep that June 30th deadline so that we're consistent with the quarterly mark. A reminder, you have your 5 council strategic focus areas with a number of goals identified in each one of those. For completed items, we have the lot line adjustment process for the new library parcel. They're also considering as a little additional update, relocating the site of the library, still within Regional Park, but further to on the other side of the current entryway. It would mean that the courtyard area may not be as affected as much for the rec district, and the cell tower would not need to be moved. So there's some advantages to that are being considered in the site design. Also, our disaster preparedness and evacuation exercise that was held in the spring. You recently heard an update in the after action report from that event that was really successful, and really great to hear in our after action reports for the past fire. A lot of lessons learned from this exercise were implemented during the past fire. So that was really good to hear that was a valuable use of all of the resources and time. For housing, increased staffing capacity, we had coordinate and partner to increase housing on public agency-owned land. This was a very specific in the description to partnering with the Workforce Housing JPA. It is not the town-owned property that we have. So the Workforce Housing Agency is carrying that forward. So we've considered this complete other than supporting their efforts through our regular meetings. So ongoing. Goal 5, new housing programs. We've implemented the revised ADU program and our pre-approved modular accessory dwelling units. And then supporting housing solutions for the in-house. This was specific to last winter's emergency warming center. As you may recall, it was opened in the Joseph Center on a emergency basis. There's still not a solution identified for this upcoming winter at the moment. So while this was specific to 23-24, we are still working on a current solution in partnership with the Homeless Advisory Committee and Nevada County. For sustainability, we have our sustainable purchasing practices and our procurement policy update. our townwide communications and community cohesion. We had a bike safety campaign. You're going to receive an update or presentation on our trail safety etiquette, everything we did in that realm at the next council meeting. But this was considered complete. We did a number of social media posts and communication. We had a very robust bike month with a number of activities for people to engage in. Then we had our cloud-based phone system. We now use DialPad. We know some people still have desk phones. Others, everything is transferred right to their cell phones. And you can return calls from your cell phone. So if you're out in the field, you're not missing calls, you can make a call from your phone. So that's been a great update that the IT team has brought forward. And then you have all updated the special events policy, and that has moved forward as well. For work in progress, under infrastructure, supporting connectivity, we have our parking strategic plan. We've been implementing new parking meter software, working on wraps and some enhancements to the parking meters downtown. Updating our Eastern Nevada County short range transit plan. You heard that recently as well. They've chosen to consider that in November at their November meeting. So they have not adopted it yet, but it's close. And then our river revitalization for East and West River Streets. We've done a number of community outreach events during that April, May, June time period. Taco talks, coffee talks. We had this event at Truckee Day. We were out at the trailheads, just a number of different community engagement opportunities to hear from the public. A number of items in disaster preparedness. We've had our continuity of operations plan. You've heard the local hazard mitigation plan and redundant platforms and software with backup internet service out at the Corp Yard, and to have that built-in redundancy in case we need it. EOC training, we've done a lot of training exercises with staff. We have some focused training coming forward for our admin staff and our finance division specifically. James has spent a lot of time building the framework and the backbone for our EOC, if that's open, to have some built-in redundancy and backup options there as well. And then you all will receive council training soon. Coming forward. If not at your retreat, we'll schedule something else for that. For housing, long-term rental preservation program. This was another program that you adopted, I think last meeting in June or in the June timeframe. It launched in July. Rooted renters, very successful, filled up within 3 hours. So that's not quite considered complete because it didn't launch until July, but you'll see that in the next update. And then supporting the Homeless Advisory Committee. That was a year-long committee. We've had actually more than 3 meetings at this point because there's been some subcommittees with the emergency warming shelter, but we are still supporting that effort moving forward. Our greenhouse gas emissions inventory is about 75% complete as of June. Had some challenges getting some of our external data, so that'll be complete by the end of the year is the expectation. And then our single-use bottle reduction. I included this picture specifically because that does include some information on our grant filling stations, our mobile water bottle filling stations as well. We're working on a single-use campaign similar to the Tahoe tap, but something more specific to Truckee in collaboration with the utility district. So a lot of work is happening on that front. And we have talked about this with a few of you. You adopt the ordinance and kind of move on, and then staff has a whole body of work associated with implementing education, outreach. So they've been spending a good amount of time between this and our single-use foodware. Our Climate Transformation Alliance, they're building decarbonization pilot program. This is a training program for contractors, an education program from homeowners. There's a lot of great information on the CTA website through SBC, a great video on electrification and the advantages of decarbonization for homes. And then in community cohesion, we are about halfway through the diversity, equity, inclusion action plan. You will actually be receiving an update in a couple the next meeting or the second meeting in October, I believe, with the environmental justice piece and a summary of the action plan and where we're at. You may recall we've had a staffing transition, so there was a little bit of delay in that as we brought our new DEI program analyst, Andrea, on, whom you met at the last meeting. To Mayor Pallavi's point, some of the new items that we highlighted in the staff report, some of these we'd be asking for confirmation that you'd like them included tonight. Others were either by default included through a past council discussion or through the budget adoption. So you had a conversation a while ago about parking and crosswalks and new state laws around that. You've directed staff to come back with a policy update, so we're about halfway through with that. We've been working on a private road snow removal funding policy or reimbursement policy. That'll be coming forward likely at your next meeting, so we're almost complete with that. Dirt Trail and Trail Amenity Grant Program. This really came out of some of the discussions that we've had with the council, wondering about capacity and how we can move more things forward. The idea here would be to develop a pretty simple grant program that would be likely available to nonprofits. We haven't really formed this out yet, as a way of getting more of our trails tax dollars out into the community with projects happening. So this would be one that we haven't started work on, probably high level concepts in our heads, but nothing we haven't spent significant time on. So we're recommending we add that to the work plan and divert a little bit of time to developing that to get that money out into the community and those new trails developed. But we would like council direction on that. West River Street parking lot. We had a lot of conversation about this with the budget adoption process. We are at a stage now with the park and the other projects happening along West River Street that we think we should start moving forward with the preliminary design and with that project. So we'd like some council direction on that item. Dalbay Umue Park frontage improvements and street alignment. We have started preliminary design on that project. So if you have a different expectation, now would be a good time to share that. Otherwise, we'll continue that work. And then Truckee Riverbank stabilization, which you just added to the work plan. So we don't need any further direction on that. Also, a couple meetings ago, you approved the van pool pilot program. That was something we were intending to do, and it just didn't make it in the work plan. So we are almost through that program as of June 30th. And then lastly, this item was added with the budget adoption process where Tahoe Donner had asked about funding the emergency egress improvement study with the TSSA $1. That was supported by the council with budget adoption. So that's been incorporated into the work plan now. We didn't have any new items added to the bike rack, so I don't have a slide for that. For other significant priorities, we did finish our labor negotiations, so that's a pretty significant work effort. We signed 3-year contracts with all 3 of our labor groups, so we won't be back at the table for that for another 2.5 years, so that's a good accomplishment. As part of that, we incorporated a request to update our personnel rules with a volunteer rescue worker policy, and that's in alignment with state law. Other items that we've been working on that have some of these are in the work plan, but they've actually taken more time than we had originally estimated. We've been working in coordination with the Fire Protection District on defensible space ordinance, development code, landscaping amendments, and mitigation fee collection. Making sure everything is in alignment is very important, so there's not confusion within the community, and we have spent a fair amount of time working through those items and are still working through those items. The item you heard earlier, the animal sheltering service model discussions, that came out of a staff retirement, so we had to pick that up, and I wouldn't say it's been an enormous amount of time, but it has been something we weren't planning for in the last quarter. Our SB9 development code amendments. As you know, you've heard a number of appeals, and we've had a number of significant code violations and other complaints that have come in that consume a significant amount of staff time, not just our code compliance officers, but a variety of staff. We've had a number of fires this past quarter already. And so even though this is through June 30th and several of them have happened after, I felt like it was worth putting in here just as a reminder that we've been providing support for our partner agencies with all of the surrounding fires. And then I noted the operational assessment that hasn't been as much staff time as maybe we originally thought up to this point. There's been a lot of focus groups and community outreach, individual conversations that the consultant has had, but I do expect that to pick up as we're moving forward. So I just wanted to have a reminder on that. So with that, we can answer any questions you have. Again, we would like direction on those 3 specific items that we've added to the work plan, if you'd like to keep them there or removed, and any other alterations you'd like to talk about.
Great, thanks, Jen, and thank you everybody also for getting your questions in beforehand. I think it was good to get some of those answers out and see where everybody's thinking and where everybody's at. So good job to everybody who did that. I think Councilmember Klostad's turn to go first. If you have any questions.
I do. I have a couple. So on the infrastructure section, item 3.7, Reimagine Bridge Street, it wasn't clear if construction has been, we have been talking about it in the 2025 year. Is that still the plan, or is it pushing?
I believe that'll be 2026.
2020. And is that mainly because of the agreements or staff time?
It's a combination of both. So the project development is tedious in that there's a lot of railroad and other regulatory agencies involved with it. Jessica Thompson's our project manager on that project, and she's been heavily consumed with the Legacy Trail Phase 4A and the West River Street project. So our ability to kind of push that project forward over the last year has been, it's kind of been going on its own pace instead of a pace where a project manager is forcing it forward.
Actively pushing.
Yeah, and so that's, in my opinion, going to cost us until 2026 to get that implemented. So it's really a combination of both things.
Okay. And then item 3.15, Trout Creek Restoration, Reach 1, Segment A. Did we get the grant that we submitted for in September of 2023? It says there was a grant.
No.
We did not. So we have a funding gap there, or is that fully funded and just not staffed?
We have a funding gap.
We have a funding gap.
We are working on design on that, though.
And a staffing gap.
Right-of-way acquisition. Yeah.
Okay. Okay, sustainability. We do have a dedicated Civic Spark coming for this year. They're just not here yet.
They start tomorrow morning.
Awesome. Well, we've got some work for them to do, don't we? It seems just that we're very dependent upon getting that every year to progress a lot of those tasks, isn't it? So I'm glad to hear that we have that. 3.2, the food recovery app for tier 2 producers. So that's where individuals can buy kind of the leftovers at the end of the day, right? Is that what, and Placer County's looking into that?
Correct.
And so we would just try to mirror whatever they land on, because we're trying to keep things regionally appropriate.
Exactly. We felt like it didn't make sense to have 2 completely different systems just across county lines. So we are looking to follow their lead on where they land with that.
Okay. And I know we're at the point where SB 1383 requires that of large producers, but at some point in the near future, they require it of the smaller producers, which is the tier 2. Is that correct?
Yes, that is, that requirement is coming into play now, which is why we're looking to make sure we can put that into place so that they can be in compliance.
Okay. I went and looked at the water bottle filling stations on the Take Care Tahoe map, which is great. My question is, are these any type of specific water bottle filling station, or is this just meant to represent anywhere that business allows you to fill a water bottle?
It is meant to include anywhere where a business allows you to and has the appropriate facilities to fill a water bottle. So some of those do include businesses or entities that have received the water bottle filling station grant from the town. Others were pre-existing or that they've installed themselves.
Okay. So it seems like we have a lot that we could add to that map. So I look forward to having an offline conversation about that. And where are we with the branding concepts?
This is the branding specifically for Truckee tap water. We have a consultant who staff have been working with for the past couple of months, along with our partners at the PUD. We have some preliminary concepts. They sort of completed some outreach and study, targeted outreach and study to help inform those. We don't have anything finalized yet, but we're getting fairly close to having some final concepts to present.
Okay, and you'll be bringing those to us?
We will.
Yeah. 4.6, EV chargers in the right-of-way. Is this just stalled at this point? Because it doesn't look like there was an update. Is that it's like, what was it, engineering? Is it, who's got that one?
I believe that's primarily community development. I don't see, there's Danielle, I just didn't see you down there.
Yeah, it's stalled. We're working on other development code amendments at the moment.
Not a critical item. I just didn't see an update. Thank you. Okay, last couple, building decarbonization roadmap. Do we have any work on the, or update on the CEC grant application for that one?
We do. We have been received preliminary notice that we sort of tentative notice that we are being awarded grant funding for that.
Wonderful.
I believe that goes to their board for final approval in November. So we are actively working on. There's been some back and forth, actually, just even during this meeting, refining that scope for the grant. So I believe that the the approved start date to expend those funds isn't until December or January. So we are looking at bringing back the REACH code discussion to council in November. Once we have information from that meeting on whether there will be REACH codes under consideration, then we will bring back the draft roadmap in December for council consideration and help get direction on finalizing that.
Okay, thank you. And last question, the work with SPC and their building decarbonization program. I know a lot of work has been done there. Are we going to get an overview or a presentation from SPC on that at some point, just so the community sees all the work that's been done there?
We certainly can schedule that. That's a great idea.
Okay, great. Just want to highlight that great work. Thank you.
Councilmember Romack.
Yeah, thank you. And I asked a few questions on this in advance, so I appreciate that. And to remind the public, you can always see the questions and answers we ask in advance. Those are available in the public comment. So when we say that, I just wanted to make that out there. So I asked a question around the active transportation plan as well as this dirt trail and trail amenity grant program. And staff did highlight that within the active transportation plan, there is a prioritization of dirt trails. Does staff still feel like that is accurate of the prioritization of our community of dirt trails?
I think it's good enough for now. I think my opinion is that when we update the active transportation plan, there's probably some dirt trail corridors that should be added to that are currently not in there. I don't believe there's any of the dirt trail corridors that are in the current plan that shouldn't be there. So I think it's in pretty good shape, but there's room to tune it up a bit.
And then just on the active transportation plan itself, I know we've made a lot of progress on some of our paved trails and some of our bike lanes. You feel like there's still work that we're accomplishing in that plan of our priorities as well?
Yeah, there's a lot of work remaining in our current plan. And just, my personal opinion on it is that other priorities the priorities that are identified in that current plan, I think would continue to be priorities of equal importance in an updated plan.
Thank you. That's all my questions.
Thank you. Vice Mayor Zabriskie.
Dan, following up on that, can you elaborate a little bit on what Task 3.2 is? Is it a planning effort or is it construction?
It could be both. So the idea is that it would be a grant program using the Measure U dollars, which we start collecting on October 1st. What that's going to do is double our trail designated revenue. And the idea would be to give nonprofits an opportunity to start implementing the dirt trail component of the plan, as well as if there's any interest groups out there that want to take the lead on putting a restroom or some other trail amenities in along our paved trails, to provide an opportunity for the private sector to be a force multiplier for us in project implementation. So that's the basic concept behind it. And I don't think I fully answered your question.
Okay, but you prompted my next question.
Okay.
I'm trying to get a sense of...
So planning versus construction.
Yeah.
So I think it could be both. So I think if there's a couple of dirt trails out there. So there's a connection from Thielen to Phase 4A to the Legacy Trail that we did environmental clearance for as part of the Legacy Trail project. And, that's a project that we also have the easements for it. So that's one that's ready for construction. So that if there was a entity that wanted to take that on through the grant program, that could be a potential construction funding grant. There could be other ones that are not ready yet, right? That require landowner permission, that require CEQA clearance. If there's nonprofits out there that want to take that work on and can show that they've got capacity or the ability to get consultants on board to take the lead on it, I think we could also consider, planning and pre-construction grant funding as well.
Okay. And within the Public Works Department, what projects is this one competing with? Are you able to answer that question?
So I think the grant program, if we pursue it, I think there's two components to it. One is creating it and what the structure of it's going to be, and then the next would be implementing it. So on the creation side, I think we would be using one of our administrative analysts who's not actively managing other projects. So we wouldn't create competition on like another CIP project for setting the program up. And then if that goes well, potentially that same person could be the person administering the grant program. So it would take up administrative capacity as opposed to project management capacity is the way we have it envisioned.
Okay.
Can I just jump in for a moment just to really underscore? I think I mentioned this is really conceptual for us at the moment. We haven't spent a lot of time, but it was really our way of responding to the add-on to the Trails Tax, Measure U, recognizing that I think that was approved at over 80%, is my recollection. The community's real interest and desire for trail work, and even if we added 10 additional engineers, there's a number of capital projects and interest areas. So how can we help facilitate something that would get more activity in the trails world that would be reasonable from our perspective in terms of management?
Yeah. Okay. On the West River Street parking lot, what is that competing with other projects for Public Works?
Yes. So we're not actively working on it. It's kind of on the list as being, one or two down from being the next thing to work on. So it's not currently creating competition on other projects, but it's kind of in the queue to start doing that in the near future.
And then on the Del Bay Yuma Way park frontage, is that affected by our just giving direction to proceed with bank stabilization?
Yes, given the timing of that, that's kind of like, okay, now we're working on that. So like, for instance, the West River Street parking lot just got moved down like a notch from where it would have been otherwise.
Okay. Councilmember Klovstad asked about the building decarbonization, and Hillary explained we're received a notice. It looks like we're going to receive a grant there. What's internally, what's holding up, if anything, staff's ability to move building decarbonization forward?
It's staff capacity. So, and to be more specific on that, we have the same staff in Keep Truckee Green who are both working on sort of core services. So implementation of an SB 1383, responding to challenges and complaints on garbage, implementing the foodware ordinance, implementing the water bottle ordinance, while they also are working on REACH codes and building decarbonization programs. So it's just trying to balance those competing efforts.
And if we were to elevate the work on building decarbonization, are you able to identify which project would replace in terms of staff effort?
We can't really deprioritize implementation of the state laws, which are required by the state, so that's a necessity. We could deprioritize some of the work on implementation of the water bottle ordinance or the foodware ordinance. However, if we want those to be effective, or REACH codes, as we will be discussing in November at one of our meetings. So those would sort of be our options at this point.
I think the challenge that you're hitting on is if we want to do our best work in terms of education and enforcement of the single-use ordinances, we can't really deprioritize those. We're still doing educational outreach, responding to questions, helping businesses implement that. So it's not really something we could deprioritize. We can't really not respond to complaints on garbage service and that type of thing either. There's not a lot to deprioritize at the moment.
There's items 7.2 had to do with housing for the homeless, and the just from my experience of the Housing Advisory Committee, I see that this is becoming a more urgent matter, both in the near term and then in the long term. On the near term, we know, staff knows all too well, we don't have a day respite center right now. And right now, the most likely thing on the emergency warming shelter is the Joseph Center, which had mixed results last year. If we were to put more resources into a short-term solution, which I guess would be finding property and money, with the town taking on a larger role with the other 4 agencies and 5 nonprofits that are also involved, who would be working on that?
It probably depends on what the need is. If it's locating money, it's going to be some combination of myself and admin services. If it's helping to locate a property, we'll have community development involved, PDs involved. It's kind of been a patchwork of all of us, because in some ways it affects almost every department in terms of location, our response, our ability to support.
Okay.
There isn't a single designated person.
All right.
The chief and I have been taking the lead at the staff level.
And in terms of long-term housing, in terms of helping to locate a site for transitional housing or supportive housing, does that fall into the planning department or Lynn's housing department, or what?
Again, transitional housing would depend on the zoning, but it's really allowed in all of our residential areas. There's not much we can do from a on that. It's just an allowed use. We can't really regulate that. If it's a new site that we're looking to construct something, that would be different. It's all
That's what I was thinking of, is actually being involved in locating a site and participating somehow in having it built.
Yeah, I don't think that we would allocate that over to Lynn, just as she's managing the housing programs. It would probably end up again being some combination of myself, the chief, community development, Danielle, or Jenna.
That sounds like it would generally be a new project. Is that what you're asking, Vice Mayor Zabriskie, just for clarity? I mean, it seems like what you're
The only
asking about
thing-
is it would be a kind of a new project, at least in the bike rack for now.
Yeah, the closest thing to it is 7.2.
Correct.
Which
I
is
agree.
that we find housing.
Yep.
But this would be,
An added, a significantly added
yeah, I
layer.
think so.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
I just want to be clear.
Yeah.
Continue, if you have further questions.
No, that's it. Thank you.
Oh, that is. Sorry. Thank you. Councilmember Henderson.
Thank you. I just have a few after all of those wonderful questions. So on emergency preparedness, it's 3.2.1. I know we said it's complete, but are we going to do any more functional exercises in the future? I think that was talked about a little when we got the after action report.
Yes, we plan to do one next year. That would, my expectation would be that you'll see that incorporated into the new work plan.
Got it.
We always have a little bit of an overlap
Yeah.
because you'll talk about priorities work plan January, February time. We'll go back and start developing that.
Okay.
Some of it's carry forward, some of it's new items.
So sort of this first one is complete, but it's going to be an ongoing,
Correct.
potentially annual, we'll see, but at least another one planned for spring. of
Correct.
2025.
Spring, summer, but probably spring.
Okay, thank you. Just because I think we learned so much from it, so I'm really excited that we're committed to doing another one of those. For comms and outreach, task 5.5, the bike safety campaign, I think I heard you say that it's going to be coming to council at one of our next meetings, is that right? Just sort of
The
what that looked like,
presentation
yeah.
on the trail safety and etiquette will come in terms of what we did and kind of highlighting how effective that was or was not.
Okay, that sounds great. Yeah, I'd love to really understand like what we did, what media and marketing we pushed out, but even more importantly, like how we measured success and what those outcomes looked like. So that'll be great. Thank you. For in progress on task 314 under infrastructure and connectivity, I know we have updates to our parking signage, and I was a little bit curious about the meters themselves. I know there's a plan to reduce the total number of physical meters. And I asked because so many of them you can barely see through the screens, right? They're really hazy or scratched. So is that included in this, or is this specific to just the parking signage?
So we have active work occurring to update the meters that have gotten outdated. So I don't have that description in front of me, but I can say that there's active work to update the meters that are that need to be rehabbed.
Okay, and do we have a time frame for that?
It's ongoing. I would need to talk to Alfred because I
Sure.
know he's working with the police department on getting meters in and then getting them deployed,
Okay.
and then potentially
Right.
reducing the number and pushing the pay by app approach a lot more aggressively. So I'd say it's work in progress.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so maybe these are questions for just a future if this comes back to council just for further consideration, but and maybe they're Alfred questions, but
Yeah,
curious on like how we get to 35 to 40, how is the location of those removals determined? Like, will anything go into those, like trees? Will trees be planted for the locations where meters are taken out? And because we're talking specifically about parking signage, I will just say that the number of times I'm downtown when someone's like, the first 2 hours are free. Do I have to put my credit card in? Like, it's just so confusing for folks. So I hope that signage will address that as well. And I know this is part of a larger conversation, so maybe less questions for tonight and just things that I've kind of flagged for a future conversation.
Yeah, or I could have Alfred follow up with you offline from the meeting as well, just regarding another level of detail on that.
That sounds great. That's
Yep.
perfect. 6.2, the River Revitalization Community Outreach. I think it said it's 75% complete. Just do we have an estimate of when the community outreach portion of that will be complete?
So the R2SC committee is meeting again on Tuesday. I think they are going to hear a recommendation from one of the action teams to, I'm going to say, pivot slightly. We've been working towards an action plan, developing an action plan. And at the economic vitality meeting last night, there was a discussion about should we be investing any more time and energy in another plan that might sit on a shelf and it's hard to move them forward, and are making a recommendation that we look at doing a couple pilot catalyst sites, and we're putting out an RFI and working with some specific property owners. That would go to R2SC Tuesday. If they approve it, it would come to council, since it would be a shift in direction. So at the moment, we don't know what outreach we would do at this point. There was a second phase thinking we'd have more of a vision and see if the community was supportive of that. But the vision is really what we've already heard from the community. So we're not quite sure at this point.
No, that's totally fair. And I really appreciate the willingness to pivot. And I'll just say, I've heard so many amazing things about this committee that I'm sort of jealous I'm not on it. But just like how high functioning it is, and how that's what I've heard. So take the props and just that it's been a really amazing way to connect people and collaborate. So thank you to Vice Mayor Zabriskie and Councilmember Romack for serving on that committee. Okay, so I look forward to hearing more about that. Last question, it's one of the new tasks, 318, related to AB 413, the parking minimum distance within crosswalks. And I think the report said staff is proposing to reduce that minimum distance, but I'm assuming we're going to have that conversation because it's going to come to council as a proposed ordinance. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. That's it. Thank you.
Great. No questions from me. Open it up for public comment. Seeing no public. Any staff? No? You're still members of the public. Yeah, no public comment. Okay. Closing public comment. Bring it back for deliberation. I think we're kind of looking to either be affirmative in what staff is presenting. So I think our three parameters are basically affirming what staff is recommending gets added. If you have anything, I think we're looking to add things to the bike rack, not necessarily the work plan. Is that sort of a ground rule that we're all going to proceed under? Okay, look at that. Great. Not necessarily. Okay, well, we had 4-1, so you've been outvoted. And so we're going to, if anything looks to be added, we're going to look at bike rack. And I think those are kind of our two decision-making factors. And if anything wants to be subtracted, of course, as long as it's not already started, then we can also subtract things as well. So not opposed to that either. Question?
Just a quick question, because I know we're specifically, staff wants some direction on the three tasks before us.
Yeah.
Is part of that conversation also if we, for example, say the Trail Amenity Grant Program and we have council direction, yes, we want to pursue that. Do we have to, at the same time, identify something to come out of the work plan and go into the bike rack? Because I know that's been a conversation a lot in the past.
I believe staff is presenting this with the idea that it can go straight into the work plan.
That's correct, because you'll notice there's a number of things that are delayed, and so these, we feel like there's capacity to take them on, or you might see some delays in something in the future, but we think we've identified them all at this point.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Councilmember Klostad, what would you like to add?
Thank you for knowing that I do have some. So in general, I am supportive of staff's intentions here. And I thank you very much for being willing to see these opportunities and incorporate them. I also want to, note that the list of other significant items that staff is working on is long and significant. And thank you for including these in this update, because I often forget that there's all those other things that you guys are working on. And then there's inevitably a new state law or something that we need to respond to. So I really commend staff and all that you guys are juggling and making sure that you're working within your to the best of your ability with the staff that you have. I think myself and I'm assuming the other council members are very much so looking forward to the Baker Tilly recommendations and seeing where we can support staff better so that we can accomplish more of these goals. So we very much so look forward to that. I also just want to note that on the single-use water bottle ban and other single-use plastics, it's very notable that ExxonMobil is being sued by multiple agencies, including the state of California, for misrepresenting the ability of plastics to be recycled. So I think just stop using plastic and creating it and keeping it in our system is the direction that we need to be continuing on. So thank you, my fellow council members, for supporting that. I also want to note that the Trails and Bikeways Master Plan, this is probably the one that I have a little bit of heartache, and somebody else does too, based on the questions that was asked. But I understood why it was delayed 6 months from December of 2023, but now delaying it even further. I do have some concerns about this, mainly because our bike trails are, especially the class ones, are really heavily being used. The way that they're being used has changed. So that is the one that I'm just like, oh, if there's any way that we could figure out how to get this back into the system to do it sooner, I would love to have that conversation. And then, yes, I do have one item that I would like to add to the bike rack. And this takes a little bit of explanation. The Climate Transformation Alliance, under the direction of Sierra Business Council, did a whole, it was kind of like a pitch camp, and we all broke up into 5 different areas where we impact our greenhouse gas emissions for our region. And I sat on the one that was focused on waste. And this group decided, because the town of Truckee is doing such a robust job managing recycling products and all sorts of other things, we focused on food waste and food waste from homes, because SB 1383 is handling it, as we know, from larger generators. So this group got given a $10,000 grant to implement our idea, which is great, except that this idea really needs to be implemented in concert with the town of Truckee. We don't want to do this and then have it be in contradiction or not consistent with the town. And so we need some town staff time to help work through the implementation of this $10,000 grant. And so I want to put that out there. It is money that we have. We actually have a consultant that's ready to do it, and that can work within that $10,000 grant, but we need staff time. And I think it's really important, given that what we're focusing on is food waste, which creates methane, which is 30 some odd times more potent greenhouse gas emission than CO2. So that's my pitch. Thank you very much. I'll answer any questions.
No wonder you did so well at pitch camp. Good job. Councilmember Romack, go ahead.
Thank you. I will jump in. And Councilmember Klovstad, I was at that pitch meeting of the CTA. She did a fantastic job. So just starting off, the work plan, the document that staff puts together, I think is such a great document for all of us to be reading, but just also for any members of the public who are watching right now. I think government documents often are very dry. This has pictures and colors and easy to read pages. And while it is funny, it's so you're able to flip through and you can search for different topics. So I just want to really compliment staff on all the work. I know that it probably takes a lot of time and effort, but I do think this is not only a valuable tool for us to be looking through every quarter, but also for the public to really understand what's going on. And to Councilmember Klovstad's point of not only the work plan, but the significant other items. So again, just seeing all the great work that's being done. And I think, there's a lot of stuff in progress in there that we didn't ask questions about, but I know our general plan update, one of the things we heard from was, the town density bonus, and staff provided some updates and questions on maybe later this winter or early spring, we would have an update. So again, for those folks who follow along and have asked for things that are in our work plan, I would suggest, you check those out. So just really appreciate that. On these items, overall, I'm supportive of the tasks that are on the screen for us that staff ask us about. The Dirt Trail and Trail Amenity Grant Program, I would just want to ensure that staff is making this as streamlined as possible. In my day job, I've participated in various iterations of a grant program, and I think I can see sometimes it takes more staff time to run the grant program. So just ensuring that however we put it out, and that's why I kind of ask questions about prioritization of dirt trails. I think if we have priorities, it helps to get things out the door. And I really support staff looking for ways we can get more projects done, but just making sure we streamline it, and then to council when it comes back to us, not putting too much into it to add on to the process, so that way we can just get money out the door and get programs implemented. I think the one item I'd be interested in adding to the bike rack, when we had the appeal related to the ADU unit that, was over the height limit, we all discussed that maybe the height limits that we discussed of, it being only up to 16 feet, maybe that didn't make sense as much if you're farther away from the setback. And we all said this is not to be discussed at this point, but as part of the work plan. So I did just want to bring that back. So something related to housing height. I know that I have had some conversations with community members who are also building housing that have also asked about the height and how it's calculated and the changes we've made. So something in the bike rack, and maybe to discuss in the work plan of, do we need to look at our housing related heights, and does any amendments or changes need to be made to those? So I'd be interested in that. Food waste from home, and I guess Councilmember Klovstad, you would be asking to add this to the bike rack for us to discuss. I'm supportive of including that in the bike rack, and then I think that makes sense as we discuss our next 2-year strategic plan to see where that all fits in.
Active transportation plan.
Oh, thank you. I had that down and I skipped it. It was at the very top.
I wasn't going to let you not speak about it.
I really appreciate that. So yes, to Councilmember Klovstad's point, the Trails and Bikeways Master Plan / Active Transportation Plan, I have similar concerns that Councilmember Klovstad mentioned of, was comfortable with the delay, and now it seems that it's the staff report said 2025, maybe 2026. And for us to be paying attention to that, and if it is something we need to prioritize sooner, we've heard public comments, multiple meetings of the safety of bike riders in our community, so protected bike lanes, things like that. So I think, again, that's something for us to be thinking about in our 2-year strategic plan as well.
Great. Vice Mayor Zabriskie.
I think these are all admirable projects, and it's a question, it comes back to priorities, not whether any of them's bad. On the building decarbonization, I looked at our dashboard before coming to the meeting, and it showed greenhouse gases have increased every year since 2020. I don't think that can be attributed to a population increase. We probably had more people here in 2020 during COVID than any other year. And just seeing that increase in the face of what we hope to have accomplished by now points out to me that I'm attaching greater urgency to that. It's already in the work plan. I'm just looking for a way that we can create the staff time to get that thing moving, because that's where we reduce greenhouse gases. We have glamorous projects that are climate related, but they don't do a lot to push down the amount of emissions. So I think we need to take a harder look at the programs that actually start making reductions and put our efforts there. On the homeless, I think we should put on the bike rack, locating a site for a day respite center and a winter warming shelter. This is not a pet project of mine. I'm looking at it in terms of the impact on our town, the cost to our police department, the cost to the hospital, the effect it has on our tourism industry. When people come up here and see somebody who appears addled and disheveled, they may decide they don't want to come back. I'm concerned about the impact it has on the merchants who have already complained and about residents who have complained. And the solution to the homeless is has to occur here. We're not going to be able to put them on a train or a car or a bus and send them out of town. And many of them, most of them are residents. They just don't have a home. So I would like to see and we're stymied in locating a site. The housing element, I think, identified about 10 sites because it was required under RENA. And all of those sites now are going to other uses. We don't have a site identified for homelessness. So at a minimum, we should get this on a bike rack, locate sites for a warming shelter and a day respite center.
Agreed. And are you in general agreement with the other items adding to the bike rack without prioritizing any of the things that have been brought up? You brought up building decarb, which is already in the work plan, and sort of the homeless day respite center is sort of in the work plan. So I think you're just looking for higher prioritization, not necessarily adding of anything. Understood.
I want to echo my fellow council members. The strategic plan is a wonderful document. It shows that staff has really accomplished a lot. I don't want to take anything away from the great job our staff is doing. I'm just talking about, actually, I'm talking about the five of us up here.
Nice.
Can I interject with one thing just for your deliberations? I actually, in hearing Vice Mayor, think that we would recommend just adding another task item for the winter emergency, because we're going to be working on that anyways. So there's no point of putting it in the bike rack. We'll just be more specific that it's for 24-25.
Yeah, I think it's not just the warming center. I think you're looking for a more permanent location solution.
Well, put that piece in the bike rack.
I'm sorry, put that piece in. Okay.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Thank you for that clarification.
Yeah, thank you.
Yep. Great.
Yes.
And Councilmember Henderson.
Thank you. I am supportive of the three tasks before us, and similar to comments earlier, just thank you to staff for really identifying those opportunities and where we can slot things in or move things up. I think that's great. I think on trails, just like housing, we need a diversity of housing solutions. Trails, we need a diversity of trail solutions for different types of users. We've talked a lot about the need for parking down by West River and just those improvements, so I don't think I need to sort of belabor that and the importance of that. For the height limit issue that Councilmember Romack brought up, putting that in the bike rack, I do support that. I also have had several conversations with different contractors in town, and I know we only recently deliberated on height. It wasn't that long ago that it went to commission and council. But my understanding is that while we sort of had a perception that what we were adopting was the same as TARPA, that may not actually be the case, because TARPA allows for consideration of the lot slope or the roof pitch when determining height, and that's from Exhibit 37.4.1 out of the TARPA code, maximum heights for buildings. And what we adopted, even though we said it was the same as TARPA, doesn't actually allow that. So that makes some real constraints. And the big constraint is that if you have a downsloping lot, someone would have to potentially excavate much more. That adds significant cost to building housing. And if we actually want to get workforce housing and affordable housing built, that's a big constraint. I don't think we know the extent of how many lots could be impacted, but
I don't think we need to get into the details of height limits. I think you want to add it to the bike rack.
Yes.
We got that.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
I wanted to provide context for why
totally
I support it going into the bike rack.
Yep.
I agree with Vice Mayor Zabriskie on, I don't know if we're saying sort of increasing the prioritization of this or really trying to push forward a solution, I think, with more, just being more deliberate around it, because I think there's been several years now where we're sort of, I feel like we're trying to play catch up. Like it's a race to, we're being reactive. We're not being as proactive as we could be. And so I agree with you and support those recommendations. And then I think the only other one was the, related to CTA food waste. And I would just want to understand what we're actually talking about, because we do have composting available. I know people have to bring it either to town hall or other places. So I think I just want to understand what we're actually talking about for that, to be able to support it going into the bike rack. And I don't want to add anything else to the bike rack. I think that's enough.
Great. Yeah, I think I'm in general agreement with all of you. I think my one comment on the food waste piece of it, and I know you have a grant right now that you'd like some staff time for, but to me, that's a little bit, I think putting it in the bike rack is fine. I agree with Councilmember Henderson a little bit with, where does it fit in the world of the work plan? And I would just recommend that it fit in the renegotiation of our waste disposal contract and start like 2 years ahead of that, basically, so that you have a year to deal with whatever food waste from household are coming through, and then we have a year to renegotiate our sanitation district contract, and then those can kind of go hand in hand moving forward, if that's the direction that you were intending. That, to me, that's what happens in the Bay Area. That's what happens in other jurisdictions, is if we're going to do residential food waste, we're going to do it through our garbage collection system and not have to drive to the 3 food waste dumpsters, basically, because that's what we do right now. So from a bike rack perspective, I support it. I just support it being along that timeline a little bit more, rather than just sort of like starting now, but we don't really renegotiate our contracts for 4 years or whatever it is. I forgot when we were renegotiating those contracts.
4 years
4
is when it
years.
would be implemented. So we'll start in
Right.
about 2.
Yeah, so that would just be my recommendation. And we can sort of maybe prioritize bike rack items at a later date, because we weren't necessarily looking to prioritize those right now. I would just say I agree with everything that's been mentioned. I have nothing else to add. I agree with Vice Mayor Zabriskie that at some point, we've had some issues with Parks and Rec and the Veteran Center, and now we have an RF something out from the county that's obviously going to get no response. So, this is sort of a never-ending issue, and unless we dedicate some resources to it, it's going to continue to be a never-ending issue with everybody else kicking the can down the road, or at least pointing fingers saying it's somebody else's responsibility. So I agree with you. At some point, we have to just sort of either stand up and take the lead on that one, or at least enable somebody else to. Height limits, I'm fine with adding that to the bike rack. Active transportation plan, I'm not going to exhaust that. I agree with everything that's been said. So, anybody have anything else to add? Again, we're not prioritizing anything. We're really adding 3 sort of things to the bike rack. We're adding food waste from residential food waste, height limits, and really sort of the unhoused action item, whatever that looks like, and everything else is already in the work plan. It just was mentioned as wanting a higher priority, which I think we all want on a lot of things.
Yeah, we are going to add a task item in the work plan to be more specific about 24-25 warming center. The
Correct.
day
Yes.
center is in
You guys
the
are
bike
gonna-
rack. And then, yes, the reprioritization of decarb roadmap, which I think is an appropriate conversation after the REACH code discussion that you're going to hear in about a month, because that will probably dictate that path and how quickly that moves forward, and the active transportation plan.
Yeah, that's already in there. I would also just add in closing, and I'm not looking necessarily for comment, you guys can all maybe chime in with Jen afterwards, but depending on the timing of the Baker Tilly report, at least for me personally, I would love to see us find a way, if we can, before we get into the depths of November and we can find some time in October, just put it out there that for me personally, this is a much better time than definitely finding 2 days back to back in January or February, which is going to be impossible for me, and trying to carve out future time at that date. So depending on the rest of you, I'll let you all chime in with Jen at your leisure and her availability, and obviously we need other people at the table, but I would just encourage us to maybe contemplate that if we can get something done sooner rather than later. I think everything we are talking about is prioritization. It's personnel based. It's what we've been talking about since the budget. So the sooner we can kind of move this along, I think the better. From our perspectives up here, we'll let you guys do your work and let us know.
I just want to clarify for anybody at home watching this and make sure that council's really clear. There's 2 phases to Baker Tilly. So this report that we're expecting to receive any time now is the first kind of preliminary report of findings/recommendations, which is the one I'm expecting to be more focused on staffing compared to our other mountain resort type towns and how we're moving our priorities forward, as well as core services. Then they continue to work and focus on other areas, and that's not expected to be done until the end of December. But I just want to be clear that if anybody in the public's waiting for that report, there'll be this preliminary one. It won't be the final report.
Thank you for that clarification. We appreciate it, as does the public watching. Thank you. Or watching at a future date.
And just for my clarification,
Please.
what you're asking is, let's try to get it on the October agenda?
In some way, just trying to take what our traditional retreat is, which is 2 days at the end of January or February, and at least taking one of those days potentially and moving it into the October or early November timeframe. Just that's a personal request because I can just be more available. B, everything I've heard for the last 6 months as it relates to budget, work plans, and prioritization
Thank you.
have a people problem.
Yeah, I
and we
understand.
put in a policy that said no new people as we were undergoing this report. And so if we can get this report and this report provides us some guidance, potentially we can get some work done sooner rather than later. And we can have some personnel discussions rather than waiting 6 to 12 more months. We can wait 30 to 60 more days. So that's just something, it's not necessarily up for discussion. I think Jen has heard the issue. She needs the information in order to come into the system, and then she can communicate that back out to the 5 of us as that opportunity arises. Is that fair? Is that fair with all you guys? Yeah.
So we'll finish almost at 7.
What?
This evening.
Oh, that's up to you, Mr. Zabriskie. We will close item whatever we were on, 7.3, and you can kick us off with council reports. So you want to finish by 7, you better keep it quick. You went to a lot of things the last 2 weeks, I'm sure.
Chamber Awards, visit, Truckee, Tahoe, annual celebration, SBC, 30 years celebration, River Revitalization Committee meetings, Economic Vitality, Action Team meeting, and Housing Advisory Committee meetings. Made progress.
Excellent work. 30 seconds. Councilman, you can take as long as you want, Councilmember.
I'll be faster. Knee surgery. So the only thing I managed to get to were the chamber awards. That's it.
That's pretty impressive. Good job. Councilmember Romack.
Yeah, Chamber Awards, VTT celebration, took Tart Connect to both. I have to say on the VTT celebration, sorry, I'm going to take an extra minute. Got picked up at my house in Sierra Meadows. Then we picked up people at Truckee Food Shop, and then picked up someone who was working at the UPS store. And we all went up to Tahoe Donner, dropped them off at their houses, went to Alder Creek. And then on the way home, I got in the van with 4 people that were headed downtown to go to dinner. So exactly what we want to see of rides getting put together with the vehicle going exactly almost in the same route. So fantastic. And a reminder to everybody, when there's town events, you can take Tart Connect from your house to the town event. Also attended Good Morning Truckee last week? Great presentation from Superintendent, Tahoe Donner GM, VTT, and Corey with TDMA. So just kind of a lot of like updates on what some of the great programs in our community are, and lots of great stuff. You can all go back and watch that if you missed it. And participated then last week in the Hops and Homes event that the JPA put on. Town staff was there, lots of other regional partners. Fantastic event, just another one of those where it wasn't a stuffy meeting setting. It was come and have a beer and talk housing. And it was great to see the variety of people that were there, from my neighbor who's looking to buy a house and wanted to learn about the programs, to realtors and architects and others to understand our programs. So successful event, thanks to the staff that were there, and great job, and look forward to more fun events like that. That's it.
Thank you. Awesome. Thanks for taking VTT, or thanks for taking TART Connect to the
Anytime.
VTT event.
Yeah, that's awesome. Many of the same things here. Business Council 30th anniversary. Love that organization. Amazing work. Chamber Awards. I gave remarks at the Seroptimus International District 5 regional meeting, and I just wanted to announce that they're launching a new program called Women Supporting Women. So they're looking for women in the community, whether you own a business or you just want to give back and donate to this program. And we turn it into supporting other women and helping them climb the ladder, because statistics show that if you support women in elevating their economic opportunities, it has a compounding effect on their children's opportunities. So that was awesome. Biomass Task Force, just a real quick update that Placer County, they awarded their RFP to do a biomass facility at the Eastern Regional Landfill, looking to come online probably in a year to a year and a half, but that was a really huge milestone. They've been working on it for a very long time. And then Tahoe Truckee Community Foundation just completed their Woody Biomass Public Survey, so we'll get more information on that. And Truckee Fire is moving full steam ahead on several large fuel reduction projects. They just got a bunch of matching grants. And so we're going to see a lot more activity similar to what we just saw at, I don't want to, what's the new name of it now?
Oh, Five Creeks.
Thank you.
Yes, Donkeytown.
Donkeytown.
It's the Five
Yes.
Creeks project, though. Yes.
That's it.
Yes. Awesome. Thank you. Yes, I saw many of you honored with Councilmember Klostad give the remarks at Sierra Business Council's 30th anniversary party. The Visit Truckee Tahoe event. Thank you all for coming to that. That was absolutely fascinating once people got a hold of me. And I think I waved to both of you from a distance as you were leaving, because people were certainly bending my ear, specifically on the short-term rental ordinance and regulations. And so that was just a fascinating event and a really great opportunity, just a tiny bit of color on that. That was the first time that a lot of the payors of the transit occupancy tax had actually ever gotten together, had any information what Visit Truckee Tahoe was, or what we do, or what they stand for. And the feedback was really phenomenal, and both the feedback of the event itself, but also the feedback just in terms of what we're doing and how we're doing it, both from VTT's perspective, but also when they found out I was the mayor, lots of comments about town's perspectives and how that all sort of worked together. And it was just a really solid event. Just as a side note, Visit Truckee Tahoe is down in Sacramento right now with the Truckee Donner PUD, pitching Visit California on our water. Basically, that's like their pitch, their hook for why people should come visit Truckee is our drinking water. And so it's a unique pitch that will obviously coincide with whatever branding campaign and a couple of the other things that we talked about. So just an interesting circle of all of that. The last thing I did was had a meeting with Truckee Dirt Union, very much about future Measure U spending and how we anticipate it to be funded, and how organizations like themselves can start to get ahead of things. So glad to see us addressing some of that right now as well. And I think that was it for most of my meetings as well. So With that, we will adjourn to closed session. We have 2 items, conference with labor negotiators and conference with legal counsel. Open public comment on those items. Seeing none, closing public comment, and we will adjourn to closed session after a short bathroom break. Thank you.